I always thought I knew her. We met in college, laughed at the same dumb jokes, shared the same late-night pizza cravings, and promised each other forever. Everyone around us said we were perfect together, maybe a little too perfect. I was her first serious relationship, and she was mine. I never imagined that, on the night before our wedding, everything could come crashing down. We had spent the whole week finalizing the last details, picking up suits, arranging flowers, tasting cake. I was tired but excited. There were little moments that I'd now recognize as off. The late-night texts she'd hide when I walked into the room, the sudden defensiveness whenever I asked simple questions, her distracted smiles. At the time, I brushed them off, pre-wedding jitters, I told myself. I didn't know then that my world was about to break. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I couldn't sleep. Something kept gnawing at me, that little voice I had tried to ignore all week. I picked up her phone. It felt wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. I knew her passcode. My hands were shaking before I even unlocked it. And then I saw it. Messages. Pictures. Conversations with someone else, someone she had been seeing behind my back. The messages weren't just flirty, they were intimate, planned, detailed. The person's name kept popping up, and my stomach dropped like I'd fallen into a pit I couldn't climb out of. I sat there in silence, the phone trembling in my hand, staring at words that shattered everything I thought I knew. I could barely breathe. The world seemed to tilt, then freeze, leaving me in a silence so loud it hurt. I had trusted her with my whole life, and now, in one cruel moment, I realized she had been lying to me, hiding this from me, right until the night before we were supposed to become husband and wife. I didn't know what to do at first. My mind was spinning, heart pounding, anger and disbelief colliding all at once. Finally, I went to her. I found her sitting on the bed, scrolling on her phone, completely unaware that I knew. I don't even remember exactly what I said. Something like, "Who is he?" Or maybe just, "I saw everything." My voice was barely more than a whisper, but it felt like a scream in the room. She froze. For a moment there was silence, then tears, then excuses. She tried to explain, to justify, to tell me it meant nothing, that it was a mistake, that she still loved me. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it didn't erase the betrayal. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to disappear. But I just sat there, staring at her, trying to make sense of the woman I thought I knew, the one who had just broken me. Her words sounded hollow, even as she begged me to understand. After she left the room, I stayed on the bed, phone still in my hand, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers. My chest ached in ways I didn't know were possible. Anger surged, sharp and hot, then crashed into sadness so deep it felt like drowning. Every memory, every laugh we shared, suddenly felt like a lie. I kept replaying every little moment, wondering if I'd missed other signs, if I had been blind all along. I questioned myself, was I not enough? Had I been too naive, too trusting? My mind was a storm, and I couldn't find a calm spot to land. Sleep didn't come. I walked around the apartment like a ghost. Thoughts of what she'd done, who she was with, the intimacy she had shared, it was relentless. And then guilt crept in, guilt for loving her, guilt for trusting her, guilt for feeling shattered when I had done nothing wrong. I felt hollow, betrayed, and alone in a world that had suddenly become unrecognizable. The night dragged on, and I realized I had to decide, either let this destroy me, or take control of my life. I couldn't ignore what had happened, and I couldn't pretend everything was fine. My mind went through every possible scenario, working on the marriage, trying to forgive, or walking away completely. I thought about the years we had shared, the dreams we had planned, the life we were about to start. But then I thought about trust, the foundation of any relationship. And I knew deep down that once trust is shattered, it's nearly impossible to rebuild. Could I ever look at her the same way again, knowing what she had done the night before our wedding? By dawn, I had made my choice. I would not marry her. I needed to protect myself, my heart, and my sense of dignity. This betrayal was not just a mistake, it was a line drawn in the sand. I would not cross it. The next few days were a blur. I moved through them mechanically, canceling vendors, calling friends and family, trying to explain why the wedding wasn't happening without breaking down completely. Every little reminder of her felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Her clothes, her favorite mug, even the playlist we had made together, it all haunted me. But amidst the pain, I started thinking. Not about revenge, not about anger, but about myself. About what I had learned. About boundaries, self-respect, and the kind of love I deserved. I realized that loving someone blindly, without paying attention to the little cracks, was dangerous. I realized that no amount of history or sentimentality could justify staying in a relationship that had been poisoned by betrayal. It hurt more than I could have imagined, but slowly, I began to understand, this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about me reclaiming my life. The first week after calling off the wedding felt like walking through a fog. Friends tried to comfort me, but no words could erase the image of those messages, the feeling of betrayal so raw it burned. I couldn't eat properly, I couldn't sleep, and even simple tasks felt impossible. Slowly, though, I began taking small steps for myself. I went for long walks, started journaling my thoughts, and allowed myself to cry without shame. I stopped hiding from the pain, and strangely, that gave me a sliver of strength. I began to remember who I was outside of the relationship, the passions I had set aside, the dreams I had paused, the sense of self that had been overshadowed by love and trust. It was painful. Excruciatingly so. But each day, I realized, was a step toward reclaiming my life. The betrayal would always leave a scar, but it didn't have to define me. I realized quickly that I couldn't do this alone. I reached out to my closest friends, the ones who had known me long before she came into my life. At first, it was hard to talk, my voice shook, my hands trembled, but as I spoke, something shifted. Their empathy, their refusal to judge, reminded me that I wasn't broken beyond repair. I even considered therapy, something I had always put off. Sitting in that first session, speaking my truth to a stranger, was terrifying. But it was also liberating. I learned to untangle my anger from my sadness, to separate what had happened from who I was, and to understand that this betrayal reflected her choices, not my worth. Having support didn't erase the pain, but it made the path forward feel less lonely. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. Even as I tried to move forward, memories haunted me. I remembered our first trip together, the way she laughed at my terrible jokes, the nights we stayed up talking about dreams and fears. Those moments weren't lies, they had been real, but now they were tangled with betrayal, making it impossible to feel joy without pain. I found myself oscillating between anger and longing. Part of me wanted to confront her one more time, to demand the reasons, to reclaim a sense of closure. Another part of me wanted to erase every memory, to pretend she had never existed. My mind was a battlefield, a war between nostalgia and reality, between love and self-preservation. It was exhausting. Every night, I wrestled with the question, how could someone I trusted so deeply hurt me so completely, yet still occupy a part of my heart? Slowly, I started to reclaim myself. I set boundaries, no contact, no checking her social media, no lingering in places we had gone together. Each time I honored these boundaries, I felt a tiny spark of pride. It was a reminder that I had control over my life, that I could protect my heart from further damage. I also focused on things I had neglected, hobbies, work, friendships. I signed up for a painting class I had always wanted to try, started running again, and even volunteered locally. These actions didn't erase the betrayal, but they reminded me of who I was outside of the relationship, a person capable of joy, creativity, and resilience. For the first time in weeks, I looked in the mirror and recognized myself again. I was still hurting, but I was standing tall, slowly learning that self-respect is a shield no betrayal can take away. Acceptance didn't come all at once. Some days, the betrayal hit me like a tidal wave, and I'd retreat into silence, wishing I could turn back time. Other days, I felt numb, as if my heart had built walls so high that nothing could reach it. Gradually, though, I realized that fighting the pain only made it stronger. I started allowing myself to feel it fully, to cry, to scream in the shower, to write pages of anger and sorrow in my journal. I told myself that it was okay to hurt, that it was a natural reaction to being deeply betrayed. Accepting the pain didn't mean forgiving her or forgetting what happened. It meant acknowledging reality, letting the emotions flow without judgment, and understanding that healing is a process, not a single moment. Slowly, life began to feel a little lighter. I started to rediscover the things that made me happy: music, long hikes, cooking experiments, even late-night walks through the city. These weren't distractions. They were pieces of me that had been buried under grief and betrayal. I also reconnected with old friends I had drifted from, and in their company, I realized how much love and support still existed in my life. I laughed again, sometimes genuinely, sometimes shakily, but each laugh reminded me that I could still feel joy without her. Most importantly, I began to trust myself again, my instincts, my judgment, my ability to protect my heart. I was learning that while I couldn't control her choices, I could control how I responded and how I rebuilt my life. Each day, I felt a little stronger, a little more whole, a little more me. As the weeks turned into months, I started thinking about the future, not with her, but with myself. The thought of new relationships still felt distant, almost impossible, yet not terrifying anymore. I realized I wasn't defined by what she had done. I was defined by how I had survived it. I began to imagine a life built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect, lessons painfully learned from my past. I didn't need to rush into love again, but I allowed myself to believe that one day, I could open my heart without fear, with a clearer sense of what I deserved. For the first time since that night, I felt hope. It wasn't the naive, blind hope of young love. It was steady, cautious, and rooted in self-respect. I had been broken, yes, but I was also becoming stronger, wiser, and more aware of my own worth. Eventually, I reached a place I never thought I would, a quiet, steady peace. I didn't wake up one morning and suddenly feel healed. It was a slow accumulation of small victories, resisting the urge to check her life online, choosing laughter over bitterness, and finding comfort in my own company. I forgave myself for the mistakes I thought I had made, for trusting too easily, for loving fully. And though I could never forgive her, not yet, maybe never, I no longer carried the raw, burning anger that had consumed me. I realized that peace wasn't about erasing the past. It was about reclaiming the present and taking ownership of my future. I could still feel the pain of betrayal, but it no longer controlled me. I was learning to live again, fully and deliberately on my own terms. Looking back, I realized this betrayal changed me in ways I couldn't have imagined. It shattered illusions, forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, and ultimately taught me the value of self-respect and boundaries. I learned that love is not enough on its own. You need trust, honesty, and mutual care. If I could give advice to anyone facing a similar heartbreak, it would be this: feel the pain fully, lean on the people who support you, and never let someone else's betrayal define your worth. Healing is not linear, and it takes time, but it is possible. I am still cautious with my heart, still wary of letting someone in too quickly, but I am also stronger, clearer, and more aware of what I deserve. Betrayal may have knocked me down, but it didn't destroy me. I survived. And now, I am learning to thrive.